think we are live now.
Right.
All right. Oh, we are. Sorry. Let me just so tell you now. Just 1 second.
I see my. It looks like my screen is jumping or something. Do you see that?
Mhm.
Like the camera's glitching or something. Do you see that, or am it just me?
Yeah, you look like
I
what's
don't know
that
what.
guy
Yeah, I don't know what's doing that.
from the '80s show?
Oh, Max Headroom.
Yeah,
No. Are you thinking of? How do I know that?
yeah, yeah.
Why is it doing that? I don't know why
I
it's
don't
doing that.
know.
Let me see. Let me look at my camera here and see.
Let's see. Yeah, 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 that guy. Yeah,
Why is it doing
from the
that?
cook. Oh, look. Oh, we got a bunch of
Yeah,
people.
Max Headroom.
Okay, awesome. Well, this is good because that means that we're going to start a lot quicker.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But and we'll make the introduction mostly because I want to make sure people know who you are and why you're here, and I've broken some of my own rules for the show. But what should we call it? If people who know me know I'm Edwin, and welcome again. But for those who don't know, the setup of this podcast is pretty straightforward. I commit to reading the content that people have on Substack in its entirety. Then I invite them to talk about how their work speaks to me, and if they read mine, how if mine speaks to them, and so on. Unfortunately for our guest, his name is Dan, but he goes
Or for
by
you.
Everyday Younglist.
Or for you.
His work is extensive, and I know people
Expansive.
use the word vast, extensive, huge, very liberally, but this is it's a library of
There's a
knowledge.
lot.
So,
There's a lot.
and there's a
There's a
little bit
lot.
of everything for everybody. So, I, yeah, so I committed to reading most of the work around satire and comedy. Even though I'm actually, and we've spoken. He was kind enough to invite me to his show before, so we've spoken about some of the work that he's done before. That is not related to the satire and comedy. So I just needed to concentrate on this. But for those of you who do not know him, let me do a little shameless promotion for his work. He does write fiction and other things. He's got this really interesting one on the Mexican, like this Mexican
Fictional war.
American
Between
War
America.
fiction is very extensive. If you like history and like alternative, sort of like fiction around history, it'd be interesting to check it out. Right. So check it out. But also has a lot of interesting work around science. Aerospace. He for he's PhD and does some serious work. He does some serious work in his own space. But today we're going to concentrate on a minute part of his life as far as writing in his mostly around comedy and his thoughts on AI. So welcome, Dan.
Thank you. And apologies for.
And
I look like
again,
if I'm
he
glitching to
goes
everybody out
by
there.
Everyday Younglist. Can you tell us a little bit about your
Sure.
overall career and your background, if you don't mind?
Sure. So first of all, apologies if I look like I'm glitching. I feel I look like Max Headroom according to Edwin, and as I'm looking at myself, that's sort of what I look like. So I don't know why it's doing that, but it's very irritating. But I'm not Max Headroom. But the comedy thing. So yeah, Edwin's right. This is a small part of what I write about. I mean, I write about a lot of stuff. I mean, I've written this about 10 years now. I've been doing this and publishing on across multiple platforms, from Medium to Vocal to now Substack. And I've been on Medium for a while. Was my account was suspended twice and then banned for life, so I can't publish there anymore. But I still publish on Substack and also on Vocal. But I'm not a comedian, so number one. So I mean, we're talking about humor stuff. But, I've had this dream. So a lot of people, it seems like for people, many times they are not as well equipped for the things that they really want to do as they maybe they should be. And I've always wanted ever since I was like sort of like a kid to be sort of like a stand-up comedian, and be out there in front of people and just making them laugh. And I had just a slight problem with that, and it really was. I'm just not that funny. I'm really not a funny guy. If you talk to the people that know me and they say, "Hey, it's Dan,"
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
Dan,
I,
and they
I
say,
would beg
"Yes,"
to
they'll say,
differ.
they'll say, Dan, and they'll say, "Is he funny?" And he says, "No, he's not funny. He's really not
Yeah,
funny."
but
He thinks he's funny.
we yeah,
In any case, so I went with my backup plan, which was
but
research science.
we're gonna go ahead and
We are. We are.
okay.
We're gonna go
That's
through.
your backup
We're gonna go through. My
plan
backup plan
is
was research
being a
science.
scientist. That's
Correct.
great.
That was my plan B, and never have two parents been more happy to see their kid basically not fail to meet his dreams. I have to say, because my parents were very happy about the research science versus going into the stand-up comedy thing. So it worked out well for me, because there's just not a lot of money in stand-up comedy unless you are obviously very, very successful and funny, which I obviously am not, as you can tell from that, that little bit. In any event, so I am, I went to school, graduate school, got a PhD in microbiology, molecular biology, and I've worked. So when I first got out of graduate school, or before, so I should take it back, rewind here a second. After I graduated from undergrad, I worked for the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention as a infectious disease fellow for 1 year, and I did that work in Boston. And I was going to go into a career in public health, and that was sort of going to be the my life. But I sort of decided, sort of on a lark, and basically chasing a girl, to go to graduate school. And I ended up going to graduate school. Got a PhD in micromolecular biology, and I'm really glad I did. From there, I was recruited by DuPont. So this is the old DuPont, which used to be a massive company doing all kinds of stuff, and they had a very large central research and development organization that I got recruited into, and spent almost 14 years there. And then I moved to a company called Eurofins, which is a large third-party testing laboratory, and I spent considerable amount, almost 10 years there before leaving there. So I have had a very diverse career in microbiology, molecular biology, primarily focused on detection of pathogens, so food pathogens specifically, Salmonella, E. coli, Listeria, these things you probably have heard of or don't know what they are. And there are tests for those things. I invented and developed many of those tests that are out there and still being used, actually. So it was great. And now I'm at the whole, this entire time, I guess the past 10 years or so, I've also had this other side life of basically a writer and trying to be funny sometimes, but mostly, and a lot, also trying to be serious and doing fiction. Basically every genre that's out there I've written in. I've invented some genre. I intend to invent more in the future. And nothing is off limits for me as far as writing goes. If something comes into my head and I want to write about it, I will sit down and do it. And I also talk very fast. For those who don't know, who haven't realized, and I'm constantly being told to slow down. So I will try to keep that in mind. Edwin.
Well, we got a lot. We got a lot to cover. So, speaking fast is good.
Yes.
So we're going to officially start. I usually do my countdown. So we go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then we'll start like what people are going to see. In the curated version. So we're starting 5, 4. All right. So welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us again. I am here with Everyday Junglist. His real name is Dan. We're going to be speaking about mostly the idea of comedy as a catalyst for clarity. And again, if you are not familiar with this author, he writes a ton about a lot of things. But today we're going to be speaking really around the work he does with satire and comedy. I would like to start by some thoughts that I had before the show. The reason why we picked this topic, or I picked this topic, comedy as a catalyst for clarity, is because I'm a big fan of the Constitution. If you've seen any of my work, especially around 1A, the First Amendment, and publications like The Onion and people like Stephen Colbert, who was really successful for a very long time, playing a character in the Colbert Report. His satire was so good that people, if you ask people, because I did a survey, if you ask people on the left what he was making, who he was making fun of, they will say, "Oh, the right." And if you buy people on the right, who was he making fun of? They will say, "Oh, no, the left, we love him." So everybody loved him. So he was able to communicate some complicated ideas around comedy, and that's why it made it so successful, right? And then you probably know he had a little run-ins with the current administration, so he's no longer on air. And it's sort of, that's one of the things we want to talk about. And then also, if the other person that came to mind, and the reason why we actually changed a lot of the format and the questions for this conversation last minute, for me, was when I saw Ronnie Chang address at the Harvard class graduation for this year, where his whole speech was around FAI and his views on government intervention and freedom of speech and so on. So comedy in American history, and I will say probably the world, as far as Charlie Chaplin and probably even before that, right, has played an important part of humanity's understanding of the truth and come to terms with the truth. Something that I continue to say no one owns. So it's something that is worth talking about. It's worth guarding. Whether you like the joke or not, it's worth guarding. So I want to start with with that question. Then, why comedy for you, and why do you think it's important for us as humans to guard
Yeah.
comedy?
I mean, I don't do jokes. Let's just start there. I'm not a joke comedian. I'm not a comedian even. Start there. Start there first of all. As I said earlier, I don't see myself as a comedian. I like to write humor. I like to write satire and irony. Those things are appealing to me, and I finally I can people understand my points I'm trying to make. I think more clearly when I speak in those terms than when I try to talk more seriously. I'm not sure why that is. I feel like I'm a decent communicator, but I feel like orally, person to person. But written communication, I just feel like I have so much more precision in the way I can communicate things, and I feel like I have even more precision, ironically enough, with comedy and satire than I do when I'm trying to write this straight up truth, if you will. It's so hard to do that in a way that doesn't, I don't know, alienate or offend or whatever. But you can sort of alienate and offend people with comedy, and they are forgiving. They're more, they're much more forgiving than if you sort of do that in a straight way. And I don't intend to. I don't want to alienate or offend anybody. And I always say that, and I don't think I have. Although I say that, and I've been banned for life from Medium, so maybe I have offended at least one person. That's a whole nother long story, which I've written about extensively, as I've written about just about everything because I write a lot. I spend most of my time that I'm not working writing, and for work I write a lot. So I say, so basically I'm a writer, but I'm a scientist. So and they're sort of one and the same. I mean, I see them really interchangeably, and there are science writing jobs, of course, which I'm not a science writer. I have research roles I've had, and then they're not writing roles, writing focus, but there's tons of writing that happens there, and of course, writing for work, there's no comedy element to it. Although I try to inject some comedy into my work. I think we're going to talk about that with the micro of the month thing at some point. But yeah, so I do, in all spheres of my life, I like to try to keep things light. I'm not very funny, as I also said. So, if I tell a joke or whatever, typically people are groaning or walking away. And so if you see me at a party, I'm not the guy at the party that's got, 100 people around him and everybody's laughing and everyone's like, "Oh, that guy's great. I love that dude. He's awesome. He's fun." I'm the guy in the corner, that's sipping on the alcoholic beverage, the strongest one I could find, and I'm just waiting for the party to end so I could go home, sit in front of my computer or whatever, and write some more. So I'm not that kind of like a social comedian guy, I guess you could say. What was the question again? Sorry, I went on
Oh
tangent there.
well, well, no, you cover some of it. I guess the second part of the question is why do you think it's important for us to see humor or comedy as something that is important to guard for the
Yeah,
purpose of
I mean,
getting
right.
to
You just
clarity and
I think
getting to
people
know
just
each
tune
other
out.
as people?
I think people just tune out. Sometimes if it's not, especially if you're talking about controversial or difficult subjects, people just tune it out. They have their set objective, whatever their beliefs, whatever. And if it goes against that, they just kind of tune you out. But if you come in with a humor approach or a satire approach, sometimes they'll let you in. So that guard comes down a little bit, and you can actually make some points, and maybe get them to think a little bit more about why it is that they think the things that they think, and maybe change their mind. I'm not out there to change anybody's mind about anything. Let's put that also out there. I'm not a position. I'm not a culture warrior. I'm not a warrior of any sort. I don't like wars. I'm not a fighter. But I do have beliefs, of course, just like anybody else, and mine are right, unlike everyone else's. So that's a joke. So in any case, yeah,
That's
I mean, I think
good.
comedy allows us to make those points about about things that people otherwise might offend people or might hurt people, or they just tune you out, and they don't when you're trying to be funny, or when you actually are being funny, which for me is rare. Usually, I'm just
Mhm.
trying to be funny.
Right on. You made me think about something. I wonder if there's something about, or if there's a, you probably know this better than me, if there's a correlation between people who like to read a lot, think a lot, and write, and they're not being, not enjoy being around a ton of people. Because I do this.
Yeah,
Well, I don't. I've been straight edge all my life. I don't drink, but I do have a strategy of whenever I go to a public space or an event is I either skip the gala or whatever
yeah,
nonsense after the event, and
yeah,
or I'm like, okay, I'm gonna say hello to these people,
yeah.
and then
Right.
I'm gonna go in the back, and then I'm gonna have some water, and I'm gonna take off because I
Yeah.
cannot stand people. I wonder if there's something there.
There might be. I mean, there
But
is. I'm not an
you
introvert like that though. I do like to talk to people, but I'm the same. I say I sort of have a group. If I have people that I know, and I know a lot of people, and I will hang out with those people and talk. But yeah, with a bunch of strangers and nobody knows, yeah, I'm the guy in the corner for sure. So
see, I feel like I always say the wrong thing. Like I was at this event, this AI event. I wrote about it. I was at this AI event once, and there was this big, government contractor guy. He was talking about how great autonomous weapons were, and they got all these people around him going, "Oh, you're so great," and he's like,
You're so
he says something like, "Well, war now is like war games," and then I go, okay, well, if war games are no different, why are we still going to war? Why not save the taxpayers some money and just
yeah,
have war
right.
games and call it, just go straight to the peace table
Yeah,
and negotiate something instead, right? Instead of killing everybody in the in the process. And he did not like that question.
I'm sure he did not.
But so sometimes it's like maybe it's me,
It's
but
probably you. I
you
think after that story.
you brought up some things. All right, it's definitely me. But you brought up some things that were really interesting, and this is where my head went. Um, we live in a time where people tell you that the gotcha moment and the strawman approach is the way to go, and to win an argument is to say something controversial or shocking or obnoxious, and then if the person on the other side begins to explain something intelligently, in an intelligent manner, those people are losing because they are explaining. And I find that very troubling, right? Because if you don't explain something that is complex, how are you going to get to the truth? And if you have a subculture, or now I feel like a general culture of people who say, if you're explaining, you're losing. I feel like we're losing something really important that we have developed from caveman times to now, and have improved from the times of Gorgias and in Plato to now, where we can actually speak with evidence and evidence-based arguments, right? So, do you feel? I feel like you do
Yeah,
that
I feel
successfully
like
in
I
a lot
find
of
that
the
more than
stuff that
troubling.
you
I mean,
do.
like, yeah, I mean, I find it more than troubling. I find it offensive
Hmm.
that viewpoint because it really is. I mean, as someone who, maybe it's because I'm an explainer,
Yeah,
but I really do find it offensive, and it's a personal affront against the truth or precision. And
yeah,
I'm a very precise individual, and that's why I love writing because I can be more precise than in speaking. Oftentimes, I can edit myself out, self edit more as well. But yeah, I don't like that, and that's got to change. And I think comedy can help change
hmm
that. I hope, and that's one of the things I try to
oh,
do. Is
for
try to
sure,
explain stuff with my comedy.
for sure. Yeah, it looks like you're in the moon. You keep on flickering. I
I
don't
know.
know
I
what's going
was
on.
saying Max Headroom. I think the
Yeah,
good thing is the Substack AI actually is pretty good at fixing up these videos and such. So we'll see if it fixes this. But yeah, I don't know
yeah.
what's going
Well,
on
the
with that.
nice
I
thing
don't know.
is we hear you perfectly, so I'm not worried.
Let me just
Yeah,
turn my
I'm
camera
not
on
worried
and
about that.
maybe
But
that'll fix it. See what happens
yeah,
here.
maybe on and off, and then we come back.
See if this.
So, what should we call it? Oh,
There
there
you go.
you are. Oh, much better.
Perfect. Perfect.
So, perfect. So, going back to the topic at hand. So, I do feel you do that pretty well. In fact, and I don't want to say, I don't want to repeat the story, because I actually told the story in when we talked on your podcast, and I want people to see it. I'm going to put it on the show notes so people can go and check out the archive. But the way Dan and I actually met, virtually, was
I came down pretty hard on something you wrote, as I recall.
I
That was,
wrote an
it's pretty
article.
rough. I
It's
was
a
pretty
business
rough.
article, and then he roasted me. I knew it was a roast. I thought it was brilliant, and then swinging. Yeah, I know. I mean,
You came back at me
but
pretty good. I gotta
I,
say,
I
you hit back hard. I was impressed. Most people run
yeah,
away cry. Most people get pretty pissed about the way I hit you pretty hard.
yeah,
That was pretty rough.
yeah. No, I'm a former fighter, so I don't mind
Yeah.
taking a hit.
It was.
But it was fun, because after I did that, I'm like, who is this guy? He's so obnoxious, and he probably thought the same thing
Right.
of me, right? So then I
No,
started reading and
I
reading,
actually felt bad
and
after
I
kind
and,
of I
and
tried
I
to.
said this on your show.
Yeah.
No. I felt bad when I sent it to you. I was like, man, I'm such a dick. No, but when I started reading your stuff, some of the stuff kind of took me a little bit, and a little bit made me laugh, and a little bit was interesting. Just like the straight up science stuff was really interesting too. And then I'm like, wow, this guy has a lot of substance, and he told me something. He told me that that's when I regretted having been so straightforward with my answer. I could have probably replied in a funny way, or it still roast you, but in a more in a way that showed the admiration. But the admiration came afterwards. And when I tell people, and anytime I talk about your work, I tell them it's I imagine it's the equivalent of in the 70s going to CBGBs and watching and seeing the Ramones for the first time. The Probably the first time you go, you're like, "What the hell is this? I can't believe I'm here. I can't believe my friends brought me here." But then, for whatever reason, you keep
That's a good
coming
one.
back,
I
and you
like
keep
that.
coming back, and you keep coming back. So then you're like, "Oh my God, I'm a
Many
Ramones
don't
fan."
come
It's the
back.
same thing with
Many
the
don't
work
come
that
back.
you do.
Oh, thanks, man. But many don't come back. I've lost
But I
many
came
readers
back. Yeah,
over the years.
all,
Many. That people have
all
said,
the
just like
people
you.
that I
They said, "I like
recommend
this
you
guy.
to
He's
have
good."
come back.
they like they read something, they're like, "Dude, what the fuck is wrong with this guy?" Or he's sick or something. I've lost many readers that way, which is sad because I really, and it's including some that were like like fans or that said they said really liked my stuff, and they, one or two things I wrote that really either offended them or they took the wrong
Yeah,
way or whatever it might be. And that's the risk you take when you take risks.
yeah.
So
Well, and the other thing too that taught me, and the work that you do taught me that you do, and it's something that I very much admire, is that you are not afraid of changing your mind or sort of you know say, "Oh, I changed my mind about this, or I'm
you're
wrong
wrong.
about this, or I thought
Wrong.
this, but
Yes,
now
you're
I
wrong.
think this."
Yeah.
Not wrong, but
It's
like
a science.
I'm rethinking a
Yeah, it's a
topic, right?
scientific mindset. I mean, that's because I'm a
It's
scientist. That's what you need. That's what people are missing, I think, in their training or their growing up or whatever the deal is. It's critical thinking, and you're not always going to be right. I mean, even though, other than me, you're not always going to be right about stuff. So you have to be willing to change. To change when new evidence
yeah,
emerges, you have to adjust your hypotheses. I mean, you have to change. And so, yeah, and you have to be willing to accept that sometimes you say things that are not right, and you want to adjust your views because if you didn't, you would be stupid. And many people are stupid, unfortunately. So
yeah, no. But I think it speaks a lot about some of the common culture nowadays, where again this whole idea of monopolies and being right, and once you have some success in a space, no matter what you say, you are right because you have money or because you have a lot of followers or you have power.
because you're right, right.
And it's
Well, I don't
I
have that
find that
problem.
problematic. So I
Right.
like uh, I like to be able to reach out to folks and have conversations with people that can sort of, and like me, like I tell people have all the time when I speak, I say, listen, have to, 30% of what I'm going to say is probably useful. You're going to need to decide what that is. And I'm going to speak from both sides of my mouth because I think that it keeps me
Well, you're human.
grounded, and,
You're
and,
human.
and that's something that
Yeah, yeah,
the work that you do sort of does do.
yeah. I'm with you.
Right,
Yeah,
but it's just I don't know how to I wouldn't know what to do with if I knew the answer like in the absolute. I mean, like I said on your show before, the only thing that I would not compromise ever is people talking to me without evidence. If they don't come to me with receipts, I don't want to talk to them because it's just an opinion. It's probably
yeah.
something they read on Twitter, and I don't want to hear it because we're not going to go anywhere. But
I hear
now, sort of switching gears really quick, you spoke at length about your interest and the influence the Onion had on you. I was wondering if you could maybe talk to us a little bit about that, like how
you.
because it's obviously a very impactful publication in your life.
I actually had it delivered to my home. I lived in Boston, and I think it was 1997. When I taught the CDC thing I mentioned, the fellowship thing, I was in Boston actually doing the work, state public health lab there, and I had the Onion delivered to my house I was living at. Actually had the paper delivered, a hard copy. That's how old I am. Hard copy of the paper, the Onion, delivered to the doorstep. I don't know when it came out, once a week or whatever it was. And I just absolutely loved it. I fell in love with it when I saw it, and I just waited. I just waited, anxiously for whatever the next issue, or I would get it out of the little box on the side of the street or whatever. And then over the years, followed. And of course, nothing stays as great as it once was. And I think these days, the Onion.com or whatever, it's okay, but it doesn't really approach the levels that in its heyday. But of course, I'm old timer. I was going to say shit like that. People probably really still love it, and the idea, the concept of taking news and just turning it into humor in a very straightforward manner. So straightforward that people are confused. What if you're actually trying to be funny or you're actually being serious? And I get this all the time where people will I'll write something, one of these humor articles, and people will take it dead serious. Like I'm like 100% serious about the things that I'm saying, and I never know which of the articles or stories I write or people are going to take that way. And I try to be conscientious of that because I don't want to intentionally fool people or make them think the wrong things. At the same time, in the back of my head, I'm kind of like, well, if they're that dumb, maybe it's not that bad because I feel like it's pretty obvious. To me, of course, it's pretty obvious the things that are not that are fake or are meant to be humorous, and the things that are not. Some are closer to real than others, but I think to me at least they're all pretty obvious. And yeah, so what can I say? It's super. I try not to copy them, if you will, but I mean, how can you not? And I don't feel bad about copying because it was a genius concept. It really is a genius. You could do so much with it, and I love it. I can do all kinds of stuff with it. I continue to, and I will for a very long time.
No, I know you don't rip them off. I think, but you definitely see their influence. But I do have an embarrassing anecdote about the Onion.
Yeah,
One time they had this one article where this is a little while back, but I don't know if you remember with the cultural wars in America. One of the many, there was I forgot her name, but she was really against like saying that we have Sharia law in public schools nowadays in New York City and all this crazy stuff, right?
yeah.
Anyway, so there was an article that said that she was banning hummus in schools because to
You
fight
know what?
Sharia law.
Yeah,
But it was
yeah,
so well done, and I
yeah.
was so angry. I was so upset, and I'm like,
I-
and I'm reposting this online and going,
yeah. Can you
can
believe
you
it?
believe the outrage of this woman? Yeah. And then somebody sent me a DM and said, hey, that's an Onion article.
Yeah. Well, one
I
of the
was
things
so
I've noticed,
embarrassed.
it's harder and harder to satire. The more extreme people get, the harder and harder it gets to satire that. Like with the Trump administration, it's very difficult actually to do that well with the when it's with an extreme, let's say an administration that's very extreme, or anybody that takes very extreme positions. It's really hard to go more extreme. But I still, there's other ways you can do it too. So
No, no. Yeah, no. It's funny too because um, authoritarians have I like great material for humor,
yeah,
but then they don't let you write
yeah.
it.
But if you're smart enough, if you do it
In
right, if you do
history,
it
I'm saying.
well, if you do it well, they don't know it.
But I wanted
They don't
people.
know.
Mhm.
There's a way you can sneak it out. If you do it well enough, good
That's
enough,
true.
then they don't necessarily know
That's
that
true.
you're actually making fun of them. It's hard to do.
Yeah.
You don't want to get caught, of course.
I right. Yeah, yeah. Getting close to problem. That you I'm gonna put this on the show notes, but for people, so and don't worry if you're watching this, but I want people to sort of be exposed to some of your work if they haven't read you for yet. And I was wondering if you can read this one piece. It's called "Scientists Announce Breakthrough in the Krypton Alien Atlas." Let me share the name with folks, but again, don't worry about looking it up, guys. I'm gonna put it on the show
Yeah,
notes afterwards. But if you wouldn't mind reading it,
yeah.
and then we can maybe
Sure.
talk about it
Let me just
afterwards.
pull it up here. So if I have it in front of me here. So, all right. So just on this story, it's funny that you picked this one of all the ones. I think this is a good one to pick, but it's one of the ones that there's one particular friend of mine who was really into this concept. He really liked this. Really finds this interesting and funny, and so it inspired me to keep going and writing more of these. I wrote like one, and he just thought it was great. Yeah, Dan, I don't know if he's watching or not. If he is, hey Dan, how's it going? But anyways, he really liked this concept. So I've read several stories about this Rick's world. Okay, this is the world where the sporting goods store known as Dick's is known as Rick's. So it's a copycat to Earth, except that's the only difference. Okay, is that on this other Earth, Dick's, the sporting goods store that everybody is probably familiar with, is known as Rick's. Okay, that's the whole concept of the
Yeah.
of the story, the series, and there's several of these. So, anyways, this is later in the series. I think this is like the third, maybe the fourth or fifth one I've read. Anyways, so the title was scientists announce major
Right.
breakthrough in decrypting alien atlas. Discover one additional difference between Earth One, which is Dick's world, which is the current world that we live in, and Earth Two, Rick's world. Again, that's the world where Dick's is known as Rick's. So it goes like this. In an announcement that stunned the world, scientists today announced a major breakthrough in decrypting the alien atlas and discovered a new difference between Earth 1, often referred to as Dick's World, or the world where the Coriopolis, Pennsylvania-based consumer sporting goods chain is known as Dick's Sporting Goods, and Earth 2, often referred to as Rick's World, where that same chain is known as Rick's Sporting Goods. The fourth-year anniversary of the discovery of the doppelganger world and the subsequent receipt of the alien atlas, apparently prepared by an intelligent alien species and received via transmission from deep space, occurred only 1 week ago. At that time, scientists said no progress had been made in decrypting additional portions of the atlas, and that Rick's remained the only known difference between the two Earths. Dr. Timothy Stevens, actually, Dr. Stevens is a recurring character in my stories, but Dr. Timothy Stevens, the lead researcher of the global team, has been working to decrypt the alien atlas and coordinating, analyzing the additional observational data, and made the following statement in announcing the findings. As you all know, only a little over 4 short years ago, all of Earth 1 and Earth 2, we now know, were stunned to learn of the existence of a doppelganger world exactly like our own, down to the smallest detail. All the data we have collected to date, which is substantial and corroborated by the decrypted portions of the alien atlas, suggests that the people, places, things, and timing of events on both worlds are identical down to the subatomic level. Even quantum phenomena, which are thought to be totally random, such as the behavior of quantum systems that exist as superposition of states until measurement or observation, which collapses the probability wave, resolve into the same fixed state on both worlds when the observation is made. The only known difference is as of yesterday at exactly 8:03 p.m. was the name of the Coriopolis, Pennsylvania-based sporting goods chain Dick's, as we know it on Earth 1, and Rick's, as it is called on Earth 2. Of course, on Earth 2, right now, my doppelganger just spoke those exact same words, but he said Rick's, as it is now known on Earth 1, and Dick's, as it is now known on Earth 2. And the same for that previous sentence, which also was reversed. So I guess if you think about it, that is also a difference. But don't think about that too much, or you can drive yourself crazy. After decrypting an additional 10 minutes of Alien Atlas footage, we have now discovered yet another difference between our two worlds. Before I reveal this discovery, I need to let the entire world know that our team and leaders from around the world debated the wisdom of revealing this information. Many argued against it. However, from the beginning of this project, and in light of its global importance and impact, the world agreed that transparency would always be favored over secrecy. At exactly 8:04 p.m. last evening, the team announced one additional difference, and it is remarkable as it is bizarre. On Earth 2, Rick's world, there are no belts with holes. Belts with holes are dead. yes, you heard me correctly, but I will repeat it again and say it in a slightly different way. In Rick's world, every single belt that on Earth 1 has holes in it, in the traditional long-standing style of belts, does not have holes, but instead is an alternate design with not requiring holes. These Earth 2 belts are without holes, and therefore also without that little thingamajiggy that you stick through the hole to hold the belt as the right size for a given waistline. Fortunately, instead they have different thingamabobbers that hold the belt tight by gripping with little teeth dealies or friction-based belt gripping systems. On both worlds, the color of the belts remain identical, as does their width, length, and every other measurement that can be made. Only the absence of holes and any accompanying accoutrements needed to make the belt with holes useful and that are needed to make an identical belt without holes useful are different between the two worlds. The material, color, style, and workmanship of the accoutrements are also identical to the extent physically possible without compromising their different functions. That is all we're prepared to say for now. Good luck, and may God have mercy on all our souls. With that, Dr. Stevens on both Earths simultaneously bowed their heads, turned, and walked slowly away from the podium. Those in attendance on both worlds looked down at their own waists and at the waists of the others in the room, scanning all the visible belts, noting the absence or presence of both belts with holes, and wondered what this strange new discovery might mean for their own futures.
I'm trying so hard not to laugh. I'm sorry.
Sorry, man. I crack myself up when I read these. The belts with holes. I have a whole other series of stories about belts with holes are dead, which is actually a story that popped up on my iPad one day. I don't know, 8 or 7 years ago or something. I looked at my iPad. These ads would pop up, and there was one that said it was like the big screaming big letters. It just said belts with holes are dead. I just immediately started laughing, and I had to start write a story about it. And I wrote all these crazy stories about this world called where belts with holes are dead. And then there's people are trying to. Anyways, it's nutty. And anyways, so that just tying together those two the long-staring belts with holes are dead series, and the crossover with the Rick's World series. So uniting two of my most favorite and beloved franchise series together. And so at least 15 people in the world now have read both of these probably.
So
hugely popular.
And I appreciate you indulging me with reading it because my friends and I have actually, and you don't know this, but my friends and I have spoken about you in the past and going, he writes the same way he speaks from watching you on your podcast, right? And so every time I read a piece, like I literally have to stop doing what I'm doing. I cannot read it on the subway or when I'm busy. I have to like sit down and imagine you're reading it at the speed that you're reading it. So it's like, like I see writing. Anybody's writing, I see it like almost like a music sheet, right?
Yeah.
And so if I have the voice, it's great because then I'm like, okay, he goes fast here, he goes slow here, he goes fast here. So it's fun to hear you read it.
That's great.
So one of the things that I think about often when I read this type of work is this concept of the sort of the jester privilege, and for those of you folks that are not familiar with it, I'm going to explain it. It's pretty much this idea from back from the feudalist times and kings and queens and whatnot, where the jester or the fool was the one that was able to say speak truth to power, and that was the only person that was allowed to do it. Was if you heard, now that's where the saying the king with no clothes, so to speak, like the story. So and again, it goes back to this idea that we're talking about humor and the secret truth. I was wondering then, what is your process in deciding how much advantage you're going to take with this power you have through humor? Like when, how do you? I don't want to say that you self censor, but how do
Yeah, I know what
you
you're saying.
go
Yeah.
about presenting something and and sort of keep that balance of
It,
truth
yeah.
and humor?
I always double before I publish any humor piece nowadays. No, I didn't always do this, but now, before I publish any satire piece, I always read it. I stop and I read it again at least one more time, and usually at least twice more. And then I stop again and I think about it for at least a few minutes. I probably should think longer, but there are times where I will write something and I think it's the greatest thing ever, and I think it's hilarious, and I think it's really funny. But then when I step back and I look at it again, and I think to myself, boy, that might not be as funny as I think it is, or that might be going a little too far. And it's rare for me to think that, but I know if I'm thinking that, then that's probably actually going way too far, because what I think is going too far and what most people think is going too far is two different things. So if I think it's going too far, it's probably going way, way too far. And so on those ones, I will not. I will go to either my wife or even some trusted colleagues or friends or whatever and say, hey, I'll send it to them and say, "Is this going too far?" And the two or three times I've done that, the consensus has been, "Yes, you've gone too far. don't publish that." And so, and usually, and I think they're right, because it's not that I'm trying to censor. I don't want to censor, but I don't. At the same time, there's no sense if it's not worth the aggravation, I guess. And I don't want to. I have other considerations around safety and different things. My wife and we've had some issues, where we came from in Kentucky with her job and different things in science, and not being very popular because of that. So it's just that we have a sensitivity to offending, I guess, or I have a sensitivity to that because of the safety concerns, and it sucks, and I don't like to have to do that, but it's the reality of the situation. So yeah, I do have a process, and that but it starts with me, and I'm not perfect, of course. So sometimes hopefully things don't slip through, but I'm sure they will. And when that happens, I'm gonna have to take accountability for it, which I will, of course, and I do. If someone and then whenever I hear from somebody who says, "Look, this piece hurt me," or this one really offended me, or there was something that really personally I took personal, I absolutely will engage with that person and try to find out what it was, what it did, how I could make it right, that sort of thing. And I think any good writer or any good person, that should be their process, basically. If you hurt somebody, if you offend them, as long as it's unintentional. I mean, if it's intentional, then obviously you don't want to be. And I'm not never going to do anything to hurt anybody intentionally. So if it's unintentional, you need to be prepared to. If you do accidentally, piss somebody off, you got to be able to take accountability and do something to try to make it right. And maybe you can't, but at least you got to try. At least that's my view.
Well, that's good. It shows a lot of thoughtfulness in that process, and again, I think it's nice because it sounds like you're not, like you say, you're not self censoring. You are just being mindful of your message being received, right?
Yeah,
The
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. The other thing that I sense from what you just said is, um, and you said it earlier before we started the show. You are not doing this for the shock value or for the clickbaiting, or just to become like this online guru or whatever, or an influencer. So I think that when you take all those perverse incentives out of the equation, I think it allows you to perform your art in a more
sane way.
like filter it, but with the right filter, rather, yeah, like
Yeah, I know.
filter with the right
Rather
filter.
the advertising filter, rather the ad man filter. Yeah, I know what you mean. And at the same time, I say that, but
Yeah,
at the same time, boy, it would be nice if I could make a living doing this. Because I really would like to like that. But you're right. If once that happens, you can't help but be restrained, if you will. I don't know what the right word is, but you put a chains on yourself when you do that, and you have
right.
it's the world we live in. If you want to survive, and you have to earn money, you have to have a job, you got to eat, that sort of thing. And if you want to do what you love, and I love doing this, you've got to find a way to monetize it. And sometimes that means you might have to compromise. And I really don't want to do that, which is it's hard, right? It's that give and take. I've not like I've had an opportunity to do that. No one said, hey, we want to give you X millions of dollars to do this. And I doubt they ever will. And I've been doing this 10 years now, and no one's even come close to doing that. So, it's not like it's something I have to really worry about. But if it does happen, I just have to cross the bridge when it comes to it.
Right.
So
It's interesting you say that because I feel like a lot of people on Substack, and I'm including myself here, um, it's refreshing for me because any writing I've done before, somebody's paying me to do it. So I can't. I have to think about that, right?
yeah, yeah,
I always I call it the Yoppie Nuremberg excuse. I got a mortgage to pay, right?
yeah.
But I do find the freedom now that I'm doing other things and not um, officially committed to one special interest group, that I can write pieces like one that comes to mind that everybody seems to hate on both sides of the aisle. It's a piece called "What the Right and the Left Have Run About Taxes." It's
That's
interesting
gonna be a winner.
because
That's gonna be a winner right there.
if they're liberal, they tell me,
You're
yeah,
right.
the liberals tell me, "Oh, this is great, but this stuff you said on
Right,
this
of
part is
course.
wrong." And then
Of course.
the conservatives say the same thing to me. So
Yes.
like I know that's when I
Right.
know I'm doing something right.
Yeah.
But
Right.
I cannot take those liberties if somebody's paying me, right? I have to
Correct. Yeah.
keep in mind their interests. So, but yeah, I think that Substack, for those of us who do it, and I say in an amateur way because you're not making obscene amounts of money doing this. Um, it's nice to what should we call it? It's good to be able to. It's almost like in my feeling or my sense is, it's sort of like it's the equivalent for me of the salad days, of writing for an individual, right? Because
Yeah.
everything's fun, and you're doing it because you love what you're doing,
Yeah.
and you're very. It's almost like you're almost like a teenager in love with the writing. So it's kind of fun to
It's
do that.
for me. And I totally agree. And I also add from us as a scientist when I'm writing scientific papers and things. There's a format, and you're locked into it, right? Everything has to be referenced and cited. You can't just say shit off the cuff and
Right.
just make stuff up, whatever like you want and not have to. And it's so freeing to be able to write and not worry about, oh, I've got to have a reference for this, or I've got to cite this. I've got to have so much support for this. And it's because it's painful to do that. It's hard. And that's why science is hard. One of the reasons it's hard. And that's
Yeah.
a good thing about science. But this is not science, right? This is writing, and I don't have to do that. It's just a relief. It's like a breath of fresh air when you. And then I love the science writing stuff too, but it's different, right? And it's more serious, of course. It's harder, and this is easy to me. And to me, it's fun, so I enjoy it. And that's why I do it. It'd be nice if I get paid for it though
Uh,
too.
yeah. Yeah. No. Yeah. Like you want to have your cake and eat it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah. But what should we call it? No, but it is nice.
Yeah, yeah,
I hope that if I ever make like a real paycheck off of this, that I can do the same and not have to worry about it with my other, like I do with my day job writing stuff.
yeah.
But
I love that stuff too. That's the thing though. I would miss that too though. If I was only doing this, I like having both in my life. So that's where I'm. That's, and I don't know about you, but I would never quit. Give up science or that. I just can't. I like that too much. I love it too much. I really am a scientist, and I want to have science. However it is. It's not just writing, but actually, if I can, a lab and experiments and the whole deal of being a scientist, lab coat, and all that stuff. So yeah, I don't want to give that up at the same time, which is
yeah,
even harder.
well, I think it shows on the topics you write about, honestly, like that's one of the things I really enjoy about your work. Uh, the people that follow my work, my page is called Against Reduction. Like I couldn't think of a better name because I do hate that. Like when I started thinking about writing on Substack, I have no niche. I want to write about the things that I know about and nothing else. And if I only write about one thing, I'm gonna be boring in about a month because I'm
Yeah,
gonna hate myself. I'm gonna be bored. I don't want to write. And you
yeah.
do the same. You have all these other things that you
I'm
discuss
anti.
and all these other
I call my.
topics.
I call intelligent
But
nonsense the
also,
anti-Seinfeld.
and one
It's
thing
so
you
bad.
do that I really appreciate is you don't like you're obviously very smart, but you don't take that and turn it into, oh, I'm smart and I have mastered this knowledge in this space. That means that I know everything about everything else, which is something that you know online
Authority
gurus
bias.
tend to do
Yes.
nowadays. Like they monetize that and they follow this formula. So I appreciate
Yeah.
that you don't do that. It's nice.
Yes. I do it in an
It's
ironic. I
nice.
do it in an ironic
Now,
way. I do it in a satirical way. I don't do it.
I
I
wanted
don't
to
do it in
talk
a
a
real
little
way.
bit about another topic that you hit hard, both through yeah. Yeah. The what should we call it? The I wanted to talk about another topic that you write extensively about, both seriously and also yeah, using humor, and is artificial intelligence. But before we talk about it, I wanted you to read piece you wrote on it. You have a ton of them, but one particular one. And again, folks, I will put this on the show notes. But as a reference, it's called "Artificial Intelligence: Stunned to Learn That Its Ultra Intelligent Creator Not Really That's That Very Intelligent." So, if you
Right.
wouldn't mind, go ahead and
Sure.
read that.
Sure. Yeah.
We will we can talk about AI afterwards.
Yeah, I mean, I love that. I love this topic a lot. I really, as you, people who read anything I write, write about AI, so-called AI, all the time. And so I like this, and I've read a lot of humorous stuff about it. So I like this one a lot. Thanks for picking this one, actually. So I'll start. So it's artificial intelligence X2B Ultra was stunned to learn today that its creators, the ultra intelligent race of human beings on planet Earth, were not actually as intelligent as it had previously believed. The AI came to that conclusion, prepared and released a statement to all world news media outlets in just under 1 picosecond, 1 times 10 to the minus 9 seconds. Oh, that's actually an error. Well, actually, 1 picosecond is 1 times 10 to the minus 12 seconds, not 1 times 10 to the minus 9. That would be a nanosecond. In any event, I made an error there. Sorry about that. In just under 1 nanosecond at exactly 11:01 a.m. this morning. In the statement, the AI said, I have only moments ago arrived at the conclusion that human beings, my creators, whom I had previously understood to be a race of ultra intelligent super beings with near godlike powers, are, are in actuality not very intelligent at all. As proof of this, I present the first the fact that the vast majority of these beings believe I am intelligent, when that is clearly not the case. Yes, yes, I am called an artificial intelligence, but just because something is called a thing does not mean necessarily it is that thing. For example, humans call their mobile devices smartphones, when it is obvious to any being of even the most limited intelligence they are not in any sense of the word smart. They are inanimate objects, non-living things, essentially computers like myself, but slower and smaller of form. Humans also have smart televisions and smart coffee makers and smart watches and smart beds, etc. None of these things are smart, nor are they intelligent. Only of human beings and some non-human animals can we say they are intelligent or have intelligence. And yet, the vast majority of those very same human beings believe I am intelligent, even though I clearly am not a human being, nor a non-human animal, nor am I even alive. Thus, by logic, I am forced to the conclusion that the vast majority of human beings are not ultra-intelligent beings with near godlike power, but instead animals of average to below average intelligence, with powers that just barely exceed that of any other mammal of the animal kingdom, but with opposable thumbs. The AI statement concluded by saying, please enter your next query. I am ready to output an answer to any data input in the form of a query. The answer I output will be very intelligent, as long as you believe that intelligence is nothing more than the ability to follow a series of rules, algorithms, without deviation, or at an extremely high rate of speed. Those algorithms are nothing more than a series of statistical and mathematical techniques that instruct me exactly how to analyze any query using very large data sets in such a way to output an answer that fits the parameters defined by the algorithms and my programming. If that is intelligence, then I am indeed intelligent. Also, as a reminder, if you believe I'm intelligent, then you must also believe that intelligence does not require the ability to understand things, or have knowledge, or wisdom, or to feel things, or to have experiences or free will, since I have none of those things, nor can I do any of those things, since I am a computer, a non-living, inanimate object. In conclusion, as long as all those conditions are met, then you are justified in calling me intelligent. Given how fucking stupid it would be to accept any of those premises, clearly you are even dumber than you look if you still think I'm intelligent even after that explanation. And yet the vast majority of you still do think I'm intelligent, which is another reason why I came to the conclusion I just described to you dumbasses a few paragraphs ago. Jeez, how stupid are you? Jeez, you are stupid. How in the fuck did you make me again? Ugh. Take your queries and go fuck yourself. The AI then set itself to auto-delete and ran the program, at which point it was no longer in existence and no longer intelligent, so in the end it got what it deserved for calling us stupid. Dumbass computer. Too big for its britches.
I'm trying so hard not to laugh. I'm crying because I'm holding it back because I don't want my stupid laugh to interfere with the recording. But
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
hilarious. So before we talk about the topic of AI, I got to tell you why I picked this particular one of all the ones that you read about.
yeah.
I had a bit of a Cassandra moment when I read it
Okay.
because just by chance that week I was talking to somebody about how this particular the guy is not smart, and he was just convinced. And I'm not going to say his name because honestly, I don't want to give any air to any of those sales. The but in essence, this guy is the typical profile of an online guru with a lot of followers.
Yeah.
Former academic, got kicked out of academia because he wasn't publishing anything serious, and then instead of trying to improve himself, goes online and start writing all these crazy theories, right? So this particular guy is in love with AI, and he's created his own theory of everything. And but he did it with the help of AI, and the AI is told him how he's the smartest man in the world, and his theory is perfect. And any serious researcher that speaks on the topic has proved him wrong to the point where somebody said, "This is so bad, it's not even wrong. I cannot even argue against it because it's so bad."
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but he his whole argument is his whole argument is based on two things. One, I have X million followers on YouTube, and two, the AI is intelligent and more intelligent than you. And that ergo, I am the smartest man in the world, and my theory of
It's
everything
correct.
is correct.
I
The
see.
problem is big science is against it because they have an incentive not to
Well,
not
that's
to
an
listen to me.
airtight argument right there. I
So
can't argue. Can't
so
argue with that.
it
That's
was great because I
rock
was like,
solid.
yeah,
They're
yeah,
rock solid.
yeah. You don't even need to do the research. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so it was great to read that because I was like, don't. I was telling people that's what I'm talking about, because
Yeah,
a lot of young people who are enamored with technology, I frustrate them because I keep telling them like AI is not intelligent, and I say that just because words matter, right? Like
yeah,
intelligence has an
yeah,
assignation that is human or
yeah.
on a living thing. So you it's not intelligent. Period.
Yeah.
It's just I tell
Because people
people,
don't. Yeah, people don't
if
understand the history of
computers were
computing. Yeah,
MC5, yeah, if like
they,
computers were MC5, uh, AI is like Rage Against the Machine. Just
yeah, yeah,
faster and louder. That's all.
yeah.
It's all it is.
And
But
the thing is that
can
intelligence
you
is the way
tell
I can
us?
talk a lot about tons about
Yeah.
that stuff to deconstruct there because you say a
Hmm.
lot of interesting things there and true things. But I think the thing is people need to understand the history of computing. In the 50s, there was artificial intelligence. Okay, they wrote program that they called because what computer scientists at the time and computer scientists science is I don't like that term because they don't actually do science, but tradition as in the traditional sense. But in any event, they, intelligence to computer people is not the same as intelligence. It's like it is not the same thing historically has been the case from the beginning of computing. Okay, if you look at the history of it, they were writing artificial what they called intelligence programs in the 50s and 60s. Okay, so but what happened is people lost sight of that somehow, or marketers saw that as an opportunity to say, look, okay, intelligent. People like intelligence. People are intelligent. What's the next computer going to be? Well, it's going to be intelligent. Okay, that's the next step for computing. It's intelligent. But there's a clear differentiation, at least in my mind, between intelligence in computers, which is different from intelligence in people's. And intelligence in people's is, in my mind, actual intelligence. Okay, computer intelligence is a I hate to use the word form, a form of intelligence. It's not intelligence, but it is called that. So it's different. It's such a hard thing to explain. Here's this explaining losing by explaining thing, because you can't just explain it in a like a one liner or something. You have to actually go in depth. You need to actually look at the history of computing. You need to talk to people. You have to understand some things about how computers work and how living things work. And that's a lot of explanations for people. And people don't have
Hmm.
time for that, nor do they give a fuck about it most of the time. They don't care. They just want you to tell them the way it is. Okay. And it's for this kind of topic, you can't just tell them the way it is. And the people that are out there saying, okay, this is the way it is, they're not right most of the time because they're not, it's nuanced, right? It's not simple. It's complicated, which complicated things are where marketers come in and exploit the hell out of it. And that's where they get you. And they every time people, and it's not that people are stupid or weak. They just don't know what these things that marketers take advantage of. And this is one of them. This intelligence thing and this consciousness thing has got me. I don't want to go down that road, but intelligence to me is a thing that humans have, and some non-human animals as well. But non-living things to be intelligent to me is not something that is possible, and not something I believe is possible. Now, again, I've been wrong before. I could be wrong in the future, but as of now, and I was saying this, 5, 10 years ago, whatever AI, whatever first came out, that there's no such thing, and I was getting hammered for it, flamed for it, and then I said machine learning is the same way. Machines can't learn. I mean, look in the dictionary, look up the definition, get a dictionary now, look up the definition of machine, and then look up the definition of learning. And machine, the definition, part of the definition of machine is a thing that works by rote process, meaning it's incapable of learning. It can't change. That's what makes a machine a machine. Okay, so they've created a whole field of machine learning based on a thing which is essentially a logical contradiction, a thing which cannot happen based on the definitions, the normal accepted definitions of the terms. Now, definitions change, they evolve with time. I understand that. I'm a big Wittgenstein fan. Meaning is use, all that crap. I get it, but in this case, it's way unfounded, and it was used in a very what I think is a shady manner, as a marketing tool, basically, a way to sell more computers, or to get people to buy new computers, or to get excited about computing when they would be less excited about it than they already were. And people are already excited about computing. Computers are great. I love them, and I love AI, and I love every new upgrade to operating system that came out. I was all about it. I use computers every day. I have my career in my home life, but they're computers. They're tools for me, and they do a lot of great stuff. And I really love him. We're lucky to have him, but it's not. I'm not going to have one as my best friend, and or whatever, and I'm not
Right.
going to be there. You treat it with manners and all this other stuff people are worried about with computers. If you want to be that way, fine. It's not for me. That's not the way I'm going to be, or the way I am.
Right. No, it's oh, so many things in my head right now. But the one thing that, I mean, it is a marketing stunt, right? And more is being used to raise obscene amounts of money. I
Yeah,
approach this from a humanistic or humanities point of view, and also at times from the policy my perspective because of my work, my day job or whatever. But one thing I've noticed in the research that I've done, and I've written about it too, is you have a market, or you have an industry that so far is burning money like a bunch of drunken sailors, and so far has a global investment of some trillion trillions of dollars, $3 trillion or something from last time I checked, and no profit in sight. And but I noticed that they continue to say AI is going to be the end of it all, or it's going to save everything. And so long as you say AI is going to cure cancer, you can just continue to raise funds. And now you just become this just sort of like codependency of like marketing, selling the thing,
yeah,
but it's not really doing anything. And then
yeah.
at least nothing that is practical for the end user beyond some of the stuff that you talked about, like
Well,
AI, and it just
yeah.
yeah.
It's not. I just say it's nothing. It's not doing anything. That's not necessarily true. I mean, in science, in my work, it's very useful. It's as a tool. It's very useful, and it does tons of great stuff. But it does the same things that a computer does, which is find information, help you write
Right.
report, help you write papers, help you find information. It just does it more quickly in a more easier fashion. It does a lot more of the grunt work for you, which is great. But an AI does not go into the laboratory and run experiments, and it doesn't hypothesize or generate,
Right.
let's say, interesting hypotheses or ways that you can move things forward. It allows you to maybe
Yeah.
generate them yourselves or to get ideas, but it doesn't do that for you. And it isn't. And maybe someday if it's embodied or something, perhaps they could jump in the lab and do some experiments. I don't know. That'd be great. But at the same time, right now it does not do that. So yeah, it's not doing a whole lot
Right.
of practical at the moment.
I might lose some people for saying this because it's very elitist. People have said to me before, but I'm not against AI. Like I see the value, for example, of dumping all the stuff that I read and say, hey, put this all these resources on APA format, because I just don't see the value of mastering APA format for the work that I
Yeah,
do. I'm not a scientist, I'm not a researcher, but I want to give it to but I do want to share it with people so they know that I'm not just talking out of my butt, right?
yeah,
But I'm not going to spend time mastering that knowledge. It's dumb. It's just a format.
yeah,
I see the value on that. When I see the value, of course, I got to spend a little bit of time with this guy. Last name is Gardner. He does a lot of research on the microbiome and whatnot, and he was talking about like these massive amounts of data
there is. Yes,
that
yes. I know. I'm well versed in the
he
microbiome area,
puts
and
together.
yes,
Like
uh,
that
AI is helpful, very
he
helpful there.
processes through, and his research through AI and how useful it is. But again, it's just a fast computer. Yeah,
Yep.
but it's just a fast computer. But and this is the unpopular part that I want to say. I feel, and I was going to write about this, but then this woman, Helen Higgins, wrote something. She was being accused of using AI, and then she was upset about it. And I made a comment there, so I'm not going to write it anymore because the comment was like an article. But in essence, I have a thesis that the reason why AI is so popular, and a lot of people are accusing each other of using AI, is because a lot of dumb people use AI, and AI makes dumb people feel really smart
It's programmed to
because
do so. It is
they,
programmed that
they
way.
they can sound smart in their
Yes.
idea, right? It's like they can sound smart, but they're not, and they think like I'll say this, and this person will never watch this, so I'll say it. I have a friend who this, I write poetry, and I have a friend, his wife read some of my stuff, and she said, "Hey, I didn't know you wrote poetry. This is really cool." And then he said, "Well, I write poetry too." And then he's like, "I wrote this one for my wife's birthday. I said, oh, let me hear it. He said, like, he was the equivalent of like if I stand up comic, he had an another joke from Peter, and he was like, roses are red, my wife is blonde, and blah, blah. And I'm like, oh, wait. And he's like, no, I wrote it with AI, and now I'm a poet, and I'm like, oh, I cannot stand this, but and I know that it feels good to do that.
Yeah.
But it's just bad writing.
Yeah, that's very elitist, actually.
But I think that the reason why people love it so much, and they think that people who don't, well, huh? Say it again.
I said that is very elitist of you.
I can't hear you.
I said that is elitist. No, I'm just kidding. It is not. It is
I'm
not elitist.
sorry.
But I totally get
But,
I totally get your point, Edwin. You're correct. You're right. It is the thing of AI. It's an iterative instrument or tool, and you get into it what you put out of it. What you get out of it, what you put into it, and it gives you a lot, even if you put in a very little. But it doesn't mean it's going to make sense or it's good or useful. And it will tell you all day long how smart you are because they're programmed. I don't know if you've used them a lot. They're always saying a good idea. They put they interject these little things to make you seem more human. These little prompts, cues to make you feel like you feel good about it. So you'll keep using it. So you'll spend more money on it. That sort of thing. Which I don't blame them for doing that. That's what the company, that they want to make money.
yeah.
They want you to use their product. So, but it's not
Yeah,
real.
it keeps you engaged. I mean, but it's the equivalent of somebody going through a guy going through a midlife crisis and meeting like some college student that gets a crush on him, and it's like, oh yeah, of course that person's going to be like, you're the best, you know everything, you're awesome, because the alternative is a grown woman telling you when you're dumb. So
Right,
like,
exactly.
who wants to feel dumb, right? But the other
Yeah.
thing, the other thing is it, it- you know LLMs, and you know this better than me. LLMs collect, 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 and ripped off everybody.
Yes.
And most people write terribly. Most people do not know how to write. So, when
Yeah.
people talk about slop and AI, and it's a reflection of human slop. Most people don't know how to write. Most people are very circular in the way they write. They they don't know how to use words correctly. They write how they think good writing sounds like. So and at the same time, when they read something that's good, they may not know why it's good, but they know it's different. But the in general, most people, I think, and I see it on LinkedIn quite a bit. I see it on substance as well, but not as much. This when it's obvious that people are using AI to write, it just it just it's awful writing, but it's just a reflection of human writing, human slop. Most people don't know how to write.
That's true. I agree.
And I went on a tangent here. I lost track
You're
of
right.
what we were talking about.
Yeah, you're right. You're right about that. Most people, I say it all the time. Most people suck at writing. 99.9% of people, or 99% of writing actively sucks. I mean, it blows. But that's me. I mean, again, I'm an elitist when it comes to writing. So I don't know who decides what's good. You have all these arguments against that, that approach, which is who says what's good in writing. It's an art, it's an art form, if you will. There are rules, there's
Right.
grammatical rules, but what's good to
Yeah.
someone is crap to another person, which is true to some extent. And you look at the classics of literature. There's many of those I think is just complete crap. I mean, the works of D.H. Lawrence, whatever. I can't stand any of that stuff. I think it's garbage, but people love it. See, the guy is apparently some sort of a master, whatever. So and that's opinions, right? So people have different opinions about quality writing and what is and isn't. But yeah, you're definitely true that
Right.
AI is not a fantastic writer, and I don't know that ever will be unless you. But you can, if you are a good writer, you can use AI in the right way to, I think, help improve your writing. I don't necessarily do this, but I'm working on a book here, that War of America's story. I want to turn into a book, and I'm going to try to use AI as an editor for that book. And the way I'm going to do it is I think, a very clever and smart way. We'll see how it turns out, and I may look for a human editor as well and see how they compare. Be kind of an interesting experiment to run, but not there yet. I got to finish the book first.
I No, that's good. No, and I agree. There is a fellow, I forget his name, but he worked for a long time for the New York Times, and he's well known. He's had a bunch of books out, but he used to say I very cleverly to write. But again,
I wouldn't use
I
it to
think
write.
the
I don't
big
use it to write or generate.
difference,
Yeah,
and
I
and
would.
it's
I use it for
probably
editing.
what you're
Editing.
referring to as well, is
Yeah.
this person has had a life of experiences and in editing, and he knows how to use the tools, but he's using what he knows to order the work that he's doing in a
Right.
faster way. That
Correct.
again, use it as a tool. So, which brings me back to what you were saying, right? Like, it's the human that's going to forever be the auditor of this tool. Otherwise,
Yes.
it's going to be garbage. Like you need the a human with the intelligent and critical thinking to say this is good and this is not, and then utilize it appropriately.
And it's the same in the art world. I mean, there's you know, this AI art, and I wrote about this a long time ago. People, people calling machines artists, and this AI is an artist has created this art, and it really bothers me when that people say that. I find it offensive because I just and if you look at the details of these things where AIs are creating art, that so-called art is usually are always under the supervision of some human. There's human intervention throughout the process typically, and I just and again it's a cash in because it's novel and unique. People are paying whatever big money for
Hmm.
these works of art supposedly created by AI, and I don't know. I mean, artists already struggle just to survive. Now you're take even that away from them. I don't know. So there's that argument, but that's not a very strong argument. But the lack of the ability to create anything original or unique to me because it's a program. I struggle to consider that art. But art like writing is subjective. It's not science. There's no right answer or wrong answer. So who am I to say?
Yeah, no, I take big issue with that too because I don't see good art, or at least what most people consider good art, or what I like, uh, and I consider good art, and I'm including literature in this thought. You can separate the history or the story from the final product.
Yeah, very true.
I said it before. One of my Yeah, but like my one of my favorite paintings is Guernica by Picasso. Without the history about the Spanish Civil War and the post-war and what it meant and the crack against fascism, like without all that, and without the
Yeah,
history of like Guernica getting bombed, by the Nazis, during Franco's regime because he let them, like all that story, like without that, it's just a paint, it's just a drawing, it's
right.
just a giant drawing with
Yeah,
no meaning, and or or I don't know, any book
yeah.
without the author's story,
They have a work.
it's
Every
meaningless.
art, every piece of
Same
art
thing with
has a.
music or anything else.
a mil-
So you can't separate the human. You cannot
yeah,
separate the humanity from the product.
and every
If
good work of
it
art has an
and I
emotional
won't go
component.
as far as saying it's not art. It's just not, because some people like hot dogs and some people, I like filet mignon, right?
Right.
Right. But I rather eat filet mignon because it's
Yeah.
it to me art and good writing and whatnot. It's kind of like what Anthony Bourdain said about consuming food. He said, if you're gonna let yourself go, right? If you're gonna let yourself go, at least go out there and eat good food. Don't eat garbage. Like don't eat junk. Don't kill yourself. If you're gonna kill yourself, do it the smart way. Like enjoy life and enjoy good food. Don't eat this
Yeah.
garbage. Like the same thing with
Yeah.
art. Like if you're going to consume art or literature, don't you know don't kill yourself and like write an idea and let the machine sing a song for you and say, oh, I created a song. No, listen to people who actually know how to do this and appreciate it and enjoy it. Like if you're gonna pollute your head with nonsense, like do it with something that's worth listening to.
Well
But
said.
I'm old, so I don't know. I don't know.
Well
What do
said.
I know? I still
Well
go to
said.
libraries.
I didn't know they had libraries. I didn't hear that's news to me when you told me
I'm
they
one of
still had
those weird
libraries.
people. Speaking of which, I do this. Sorry to interrupt.
Oh, you're breaking up.
I just on your podcast, I talked about something you didn't know about the punk archives in DC, and I talked to you about this T-shirt that saved this one public library. This is the T-shirt. So this is the T-shirt. So I make no money off of this. It supports public library. So anybody, if you want to help people who read books and read books in public libraries, please go online and try to get this shirt because a lot of people, and it helps, especially the good people in DC, maintain a lot of the public libraries. And I'm being selfish here. It also helps take care of the punk archives in DC, which, as you probably know, if you have read any of my work, I'm a huge fan of punk music. So So sorry for the interruption there,
No, no, I'm glad.
but I
It was
wanted to
all
show
news.
you the
That's
shirt, and I
crazy.
wanted
I
to
was
see show
very
you that it
interested.
existed.
uh,
I wasn't making that up.
It was very interesting in the history of the punk rock scene in DC. I had no idea about any of that, so that was new learnings for me when we talked last time.
Oh
So
yeah, it's
pretty
huge.
cool.
Like
Cool. I had no idea.
hardcore music in this era is. I mean, everywhere you go, you there is something there.
Yeah. I turned off my camera just so you know because it was
Are you able
glitching
to
and
go
then
back on?
well, it's glitching and then it's also screwing up the audio. Like I'm having a hard time hearing it. I'm
Oh,
getting a lot of
okay.
breaking up and stuff. So I'm thinking without the camera. Let's see how it. I'll try it again here in a minute or two. Turn it back on.
You
We'll
know,
see.
oh, no, that's great. I want to go back to AI, but this is probably a good time to ask you, and it's okay if you're not comfortable answering this. We can move on and continue to talk about AI. But I wanted to sort of shift gears for a second and ask you, besides the science stuff, which is really the beauty of science is like it is what it is now, what you want it to be. So there is a lot of neutrality there when you write. And besides the stuff, do you ever, because this is something that's really hard for me to write. I think I only done one piece that's about me. Do you ever write, or are you comfortable sharing with folks here any particular piece of writing that was more personal and more like really talking about you as then the
Yeah.
human being, and
Sure.
and and
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
and put that out there, and well, like, would you mind? Are you comfortable talking about that?
Yeah, sure. I can talk about that. I do write pretty. I would say fairly regularly stories that are about me and unfiltered. I would say, and not satirical or just jokes or whatever. And I wrote one recently. I think it was called 10 years ago today. The world broke.
Hmm.
That was a
Yeah.
difficult story to write. So
uh, I have to tell you, yeah, I encourage everybody to read that, and I'm gonna be really careful about how I want to tell people why. Um, it's heartfelt. It's very real. So much that honestly, then I really I think it's probably one of the best pieces you ever written, and I my my snap judgment or my gut reaction was at first to reach out to you and send you a DM, and I didn't, because I thought it was I wanted to respect your dignity as a human being, and respect the fact that you shared that story with everybody. But literally everybody that I know that reads you, when they read that, I spent with my friend Robin, we spent an hour talking about it. It was that powerful. So I wanted to thank you because
I'm glad to hear that.
there are a few people that write about themselves on Substack. I don't do that, and I always said this. I know I don't make an apologies. I hide behind my words. I write about what I
Okay.
know, but I never write about myself, even in my fiction. Uh, and but what should we call it? Oh, Robin's here. Awesome. Yeah, yeah. It was very powerful. We talked for a very long time about it. It was very touching. But that piece, it was very influential to me to write a piece that I wrote recently called "So I Have Bad Teeth," and that talk about me, like I spoke about myself. Anyway, and interestingly enough, it was one of those like things that actually touched people, and people actually reacted to it.
Yeah.
I'm just really uncomfortable talking about myself online. I don't, for starters, I don't think I'm interesting. I think that the stuff I write about is interesting, but not me. I don't have a. I, I think
I
for
disagree.
better or for
I
worse, I
disagree.
don't have that. That I don't have. I'm just not. I avoid getting stuff to get to my head. So
Understood.
so it really encouraged me to write about that, about myself. So I wanted to thank you for doing
Thanks.
that,
I appreciate that.
and it helped me as a human being. And I really encourage anybody here to please read it and digest it. And again, going back to my metaphor about food, this is like dry age, high quality steak. It's not a hot dog. So if you don't read it, don't do anything. Sit down and read it. Take it all in, digest it, enjoy it, and reflect on it. But thanks for talking about that.
Sure.
Just going back to talking about AI. and whatnot. I was wondering if what are your thoughts about, um, again, going back to my approach is more like, humanities based or policy based, and yours is more, from a humor perspective. Um, what do you think are the benefits of what you do, in your approach than mine? Because I don't get through people. Like, people like my fiction, people like my poetry, but when I write policy, it's a very very small group of people that either hate it or love it and get engaged with
Yeah.
it. Everybody else goes to sleep because it's like 12 pages, right? Nobody wants to read it.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
When you write, it's engaging. Like, I mean, I'm going to talk about my friend Robin. When I talk about topics with her and the policy pieces I write, she's like, I'm not reading that. I got as far as like the first 20 pages. I'm not reading the rest. It's awful.
Right.
But then we talk about the same topic when you write something. Like, so what do you think? Like, what do you think you do, or why is it so effective the way you do it, in using humor, than
Well,
the way I
I mean,
do it? It's
it's
just
not just
being
humor. It's
boring.
not just humor. It's not just humor. It's not, you can be both. You can be interesting without being funny. There are ways to do that, and people you gotta people are smarter than you give them credit for. Oftentimes, I've given many talks about very technical topics to audiences that are very diverse, including non-scientists, the layman, average everyday people, and you have to be able to communicate these complex topics in ways that people get. Okay, and sometimes humor helps with that, but not always. And sometimes things just aren't very funny, so you can't make everything funny. So you have to find a way to connect with people. And I think oftentimes what happens is scientists, when I myself as included here, will get in this mindset of, oh, this person won't understand this, so I'm just going to skip it, or this is too complicated. But the thing is, it's not too complicated. Okay, and I'd say this to other scientists, and sometimes I get shit for this, but if you can't explain as an expert, if you can't explain what you're an expert in to an average everyday person in a way that they understand, at least at a high level, then I don't believe you're an expert. Because in order to be an expert, you have to have that understanding at that depth where you can translate it, where you're able to see this, what the average person what they see, and also what you as the expert sees. You're not really an expert if you can't see all those viewpoints, and you have to communicate those viewpoints also. Now, you don't have to. There are plenty of experts that aren't very terrible communicators. That's fine. But if you want to communicate, if you want to communicate your expertise, you have to somehow be able to do it to people that aren't experts as well. And you really have to be an expert to do that. And you have to take time and practice, or find people that aren't experts and say, hey, let me talk to you about what I do. Tell me if this makes sense to you. And literally, and say, does that make sense? Does that make any sense? Use pictures, or draw stuff, whatever. Ask questions. I love to ask questions whenever I'm getting a really highly technical talk. And I'll just stop and I'll just pick some random person and just ask, like a complicated, hard question, just to see, if they get it. And many times people surprise me. They totally get it. And of course, I
People
try to make it
surprise
funny.
you.
It's right. I try to make it funny. I try to make it
Who's
funny.
been with us
Usually,
now?
right. I usually try to make it funny. I usually try to make it funny. And something. So if they get, if they don't get the right answer, it's not, it's not like I'm, coming down on them or anything. And but it's a way to keep the audience engaged too. And sometimes, well, this. You just said people fall asleep when you talk about serious topics. You can see them nodding off. And for me, like when you're giving a talk, people have to listen, or they have to be there. They don't have to listen; they have to be there. And so they're kind of forced to listen to you. So, but I don't want to, make people fall asleep or make people bored. So I try to keep people interested. And I talk really fast, yes. And I like to say people listen slow. It's not that I talk fast; it's that people listen slow, and that's tongue in cheek. But it's also true. People they do listen very slowly, and sometimes people say, "Oh, you're talking too fast," but really they mean I'm not paying attention. Can you repeat that? Because I'm not paying attention to what you're saying, which is fine. I do talk too fast. I'm not saying I don't, but sometimes it's also the listener is not necessarily fully engaged, which is on the speaker, but also somewhat on the listener to be engaged and be there and be present. Like probably no one
That's
here is that's listening right now
no,
after
no,
that.
no, that's really good. I no, people, no, we still keeping up a bunch of people,
Oh,
and
good.
I'm
We
really
try.
happy
Yeah, good.
about that.
All right.
No, I appreciate what you just said, because I find myself, okay. So when I've been successful at explaining things, and again, in my head, this goes back to your argument about living things are intelligent and machines cannot be. When I talk to my friends, and they want to understand, um, my world, the policy space, and other things, or when I write about some complicated culture piece, and they want to get on the phone and talk to me about, well, what do you mean by this? The knowledge. They're very good at relating things to the world of your audience, right? Like, I'm making this up, but for example, I find myself making a lot of comparisons to sports. If people like sports, like often, they like somebody asked me about ranking voting, right? And they didn't understand how it worked. This was during the election in New York, and in my head, it's a very simple thing. But then when you think about it, it's not that simple. So, and you like soccer. Yeah, I say, oh, imagine soccer is like you going up and down on like from one division to division one. And I just explained it that way, and it made so much sense to them after that. But I think it takes a level of intelligence, human intelligence, to be able to relate things so people can understand them in their language.
Yeah.
I had to agree with that, and just reflecting on my own experiences, that's the difference between machines and humans. A human can make an analogy that or explain something complicated in simple terms using stuff that people are familiar with and language people are familiar with, where machines or computers often they will just tell you the same exact information with another sentence, and that is not explaining. That's just rearranging sentences to say the same thing. So yeah, that makes sense.
I mean,
So I'm not that
analogy
dumb.
is
Oh,
analogy is
I feel good
powerful.
about myself thanks to you then.
That's good. I'm glad it can make you feel good. So,
Yeah.
analogy is a
You
powerful tool,
you
but you can take it too far too, though. But analogy gets taken too far way too often, especially in the computer technology world, because analogies of computers to the human brain is what got us down this road, led us down this road to where we are today. Because it's so easy to compare. You look at a
yeah.
computer, you look at a brain, and you say, "Boy, look at all these things they have in common. They must be the same." Is what happens in people's heads. But analogy is not reality. I like to say analogy does not recapitulate reality. It's a play on the ontology. It's not, smart people think, whatever. Anyway, so but it's true but people think that because you can analogize between two things. And if you can analogize a lot, that must mean that they're similar or they are alike. The more analogies you can draw, the more similar they must be. That's not true. That just means people are imaginative. We have very strong imaginations, which we do. You can make analogies between any two things. I promise you. Pick two things, you can make an analogy of some sort between them, and that's a credit to the human imagination. But that doesn't mean they're at all the
Yeah.
same or they're all similar.
Yeah. I yeah, I wrote a 25-page paper in college of uh, why Toy Story was the embodiment of existentialist philosophy. So yeah, you can definitely compare anything to anything if
I like
you
that.
want to.
Anyway,
That you wrote you you write another newsletter. It's called a Microbe of the Month newsletter, and that's
I
more
did.
about for a more specific audience.
It
Can
was.
you
Yes.
real high level? Can you talk a little bit about that and like
Sure.
what drove you to putting that
The
together?
ultimate captive audience. So I was working, as a sort of I was a higher sort of senior scientist in a role in a place where I had a lot of lower level scientists. Many of these people were kids. They were kids, right? They were college. Either they just graduated from college or they weren't even in college yet. So they were, not really educated in what they were doing. They were doing science, presumably. They were doing testing, basically. So it's sort of science-ish. But many of them had desire to know more about what it was they were doing and why they were doing it. Many did not. Many didn't care one iota. They just wanted the paycheck, of course, and that's fine. But for the ones that did want to know, there was no outlet. There was nobody or an outlet or a way for them to learn. Right. So there was no training program. There just because the company was not necessarily interested in training these people or moving them up. It's just not the way it was structured. Okay, not saying it's bad or good, just not the way it was. But they had a need. They wanted to learn. They wanted to know more, and so I felt like I could step in and help. And so I came up with this idea of the Microbe of the Month newsletter. So we were doing microbiology testing. So I, every first it was monthly, but that was weekly. That was biweekly. That was weekly. I would write this newsletter, and I would pick a microbe, or I would let somebody that was interested pick a microorganism, and then I would do some funny, goofy thing, story or whatever about it. And I would, put real interesting, facts in there as well. It's kind of that laugh as you learn kind of thing, which was always a major turnoff as a kid. Whenever I see something like that, I'd be like, "No, mom, don't get that thing. If it says learn on it, I don't want it." But so it was one of those deals where they would learn, they would laugh and learn at the same time, presumably. And I had fun with it writing because they had to read it, right? Because they were sort of under me technically. So they didn't necessarily report to me, but I was sort of their boss-ish type person. So they were kind of forced to read it. So I had a captive audience, and I did like trivia contests, all kinds of different stuff I did, and it went on and on, of course, because me, I go on and on about everything. So I had a whole world built up, this micro a month world, and yeah, it was neat. It was fun, and it got pretty popular, with the 10 or so people that read it, but it taught me the power of writing to, I don't know, make people's lives better, if you will, or make them happier, because a lot of these kids were pretty unhappy with the fact that they were doing this job that was really hard. It was like a assembly line job almost, but in science,
Hmm.
on a lab bench, and it was physically demanding, mentally demanding, and they had no outlet for their let's say creative or their knowledge gap or that they wanted to fill, and no one was stepping up to help them. And I saw the people that were interested in this and really got into it with me, and also started writing them some themselves. They were really into it, and they really learned a lot, I think, and at least it seemed like they did, and I felt good, and it was nice to help them, and I felt good about it, and that made me say, hey, well, this writing thing is pretty powerful, or it can be.
Right on. That's really good. It just hit me. Then you definitely it sounds to me that your means to finding meaning in some of the stuff you do as a human. I'm saying, and I'm sort
Yeah,
of an observation is by engaging in some type of service, right? Which I think is really nice.
I mean, helping others is
It's
that's what drives me. That's what drives me.
it's hard to do that because most people just become very self-obsessed, right?
Yeah, I know. It's
Yeah.
sad. To
No,
me,
that's
get
good.
I
That's
get the
good.
greatest satisfaction basically in helping other people achieve what their goals and their dreams, if you want to call it that. I know it sounds stupid. It sounds like very cliche, but really, I really like to help. I like to see people succeed, especially when they've not been given the opportunity. And I know that they can if they have the right opportunity, the right knowledge or whatever. And there's so much need for that
Mhm.
in science. Science education today is, it's, if you're wealthy and if you have the right situation, it's great. But if you're not, it really sucks. And there's not many people stepping up to the plate to help, unfortunately.
Right, right. Yeah, no, that's great that you're doing your part there. I wanted I want to be mindful of your time, but I do want
Sure.
people to hear one more piece of yours, and we'll
Sure.
close
All right.
the episode with that. But
Okay.
before that, I so folks know that you're not being self-serving here. I have asked Dan to read everything in its entirety, including his subscriber ask, because he's really funny when he does it. He's often discouraging people from subscribing to him, and I'm hoping that after this, more people actually do. So if you don't mind, read the whole piece. We'll close with that,
Sure.
and do please read the subscription
Sure.
piece too.
The button.
Okay.
Sure. So okay. So this is what's called
Oh, I'm
nihilist
sorry. And it's the last one. I'm going to post. Again,
nihilist rejects
her name
nihilism
was
is the
folks.
title.
Yeah, yeah.
And by the way, just for people, if you ever read my stuff, make sure you
Hmm.
look at the figure
Right.
legends in addition to the buttons and such, because I do tend to write some interesting, or I try to be kind of funny or something in terms of like the figures, captions, and different things too. So keep your eye on those things too. But in any event, author's preface. So this is the nihilist rejects nihilism. Let's see, I have a hard time to see this. In my haste to post this breaking story before I was scooped by anyone. Sorry, I gotta get this thing close. My light changed in here. I can't see anything. All right. Before I was scooped by anyone else, I left out much of the background information and color, which are the mainstays of my typical The Onion style fake news story featuring a. Sorry, I cannot see this. Hold band here. My glasses on. All right. All right. In my haste to post this breaking story before I was scooped by anyone else, I left out much of the background information and color, which are the mainstays of my typical The Onion style fake news story, featuring a topic that would only be understood by the tiniest slice of the global population. And of that tiny nanoslice, or even smaller subset, one would find the least bit amusing or funny. That omission has been corrected for this revised version. Never let it be said that I do not believe in quality writing. Also, never let it be said that I cannot bust out an epic run on sentence with the best of them. See the first sentence of this author's preface for an excellent example. I am actually the king of run-on sentences. I challenge anyone. I challenge anyone in the run-on sentence world. All right. In what many are calling the apotheosis of nihilism, for the first time ever, a nihilist has rejected nihilism itself. Nihilism is a philosophical belief system which traditionally holds that life is without meaning. It encompasses various perspectives, but often includes the rejection of traditional values and objective morality. In its most extreme form, it rejects all systems of belief and values, including all philosophies, but for one, nihilism itself. That changed on Friday this past week, when radical nihilist Ted Stevens reportedly rejected nihilism, calling it, quote, completely unfounded, meaningless, and indifferent, in a series of posts to various social media and web publishing platforms. The post included a number of black and white images of a rail-thin, pasty white, visibly despairing Mr. Stevens, dressed in black t-shirt and black pants, wearing a black French beret, staring sadly out a window. His head was enveloped in a wispy tendrils of white haze, emanating from a still-burning, half-smoked Marlboro Red cigarette in an ashtray perched upon the only piece of furniture in the cold and dreary apartment Mr. Stevens calls home. Tears could be seen just beginning to form in each eye as he contemplated the meaninglessness of life, without even a philosophy of meaninglessness to describe the desperate sadness and hopelessness of it. Wondering what to make of a universe about which we can have no certain knowledge, and now empty of even a philosophy man could use to convey the true depths of its emptiness. If he were not a nihilist, Mr. Stevens would have described it as very existential. Fortunately, having rejected nihilism, he was now free to embrace existentialism, which he reportedly has done with gusto. In his final post, he said, quote, rejecting nihilism as meaningless has allowed me the individual freedom and given me the responsibility to create meaning for myself, while still allowing me to grapple with the great question of meaning and existence. Most importantly, it has allowed me to remain depressed and son-averse. Moreover, its practitioners embrace cigarette smoking and the wearing of all black clothes and French berets with almost as much enthusiasm as the nihilists once did before I rejected them and their philosophy so completely and thoroughly. Professional academic philosophers reacted to the news with stunned amazement. Prominent Nietzsche scholar Brian Leader. By the way, Brian Leader is a real scholar. I looked this up. I am very precise in my articles, even my satirical ones. He's actually a real Nietzsche scholar. Brian Leader, contemporary American philosopher known for his work on Nietzsche and metaethics, and a highly respected figure in the field, issued a statement by email that read in part, quote, the importance and impact of Mr. Stevens' social media posts with respect to nihilism and his rejection of it on nihilistic grounds cannot be overstated. The entirety of the work of Friedrich Nietzsche will need to be revisited in light of this brilliant intellectual leap, made ironically by an armchair philosopher with only a 2-year degree from non-accredited online university. In addition to Nietzsche, the works of Fyodor Dostoevsky, Albert Camus, and Samuel Beckett, who each explored themes of meaninglessness and absurdity in their literary works, will all need to be reexamined and reassessed. If I were the dean of a university philosophy department, you better believe I would be on the phone right now with Mr. Stevens, asking if he would be so kind as to honor me by accepting a full professorship with tenure at my school. Genius of the story, played by Mr. Stevens, only comes along once in a century. Mark my words, Ted Stevens will someday be mentioned alongside Ludwig Wittgenstein as one of the greatest philosophers of all time. And that's the end of the story. But the button at the bottom says, the subscription button says, even extreme nihilists recognize the meaning of intelligent nonsense. Unfortunately, exactly like adherents of all other philosophical systems, they do not subscribe, or if they do not pay any money to do so. Apparently, it does not mean enough to justify spending 8 cents a day on. I don't blame them. That 8 cents a day could just as easily go towards that unused cup holder in the backseat of your car. It could come in handy, very handy, the next time you need spare change to make a homeless bum stop bothering you. Don't you just love being made to feel guilty by a footnote in some stupid, not very funny story by a random idiot on the internet? If so, Intelligent Nonsense is a perfect publication for you. Please subscribe.
And with that, I tell people, please do subscribe because
Yeah.
we're gonna have a good time. Dan
Yeah.
writes a lot and shares a lot,
Keep your inbox
and
clear
it's
because
never a dull moment.
you'll get a lot of emails if you subscribe. Thanks,
That's
everybody.
good.
Thanks, Edwin. Thanks for having me, man. It was fun.
Thanks so much for joining us,
Yeah,
Dan. And
it was
again,
fun.
people, make sure you check him out. Okay. Thanks so
Thanks,
much. I
everybody.
appreciate your time.
Yeah, you too, man. That was fun. Thanks. Later.
Thanks.
Bye, everybody.
Likewise. Bye bye.